Have you ever wondered who is responsible for protecting the public's health? Or what happens if public health power and authority is not clearly spelled out for every situation? How do you know whether your health department has the authority to enact or enforce laws that promote your community's health and well-being? This video explores the role that each level of government, federal, state, and local, plays in protecting the public's health. Understanding the basic structure of government is an often overlooked yet foundational competency for public health practice. Let's begin with the basic structure and functions of government in the United States, starting with the federal government. The U.S. Constitution is the source of the federal government's authority. The Constitution sets forth the extent and limitations of the federal government's powers. Specifically, the powers that the Constitution grants to the federal government can be classified in three ways, which you can see here on this slide. Enumerated powers, those expressly stated in the Constitution. Implied powers, those within the federal government's authority but not expressly listed in the Constitution. Concurrent powers, those shared with the states. Note that the government's powers must be either enumerated or implied, but both enumerated and implied powers can be shared with the states. We'll go into more detail about these types of powers in the next few slides. Starting with the enumerated powers, I want to highlight three examples that have important implications for public health interventions. The first is the power to spend money for the general welfare. The minimum drinking age in the United States is an example of how the federal government used its enumerated powers, in this case under the spending clause, to shape public health indirectly by withholding 10% of federal highway funding from states that did not maintain a minimum drinking age of 21. The second is the power to regulate commerce both domestically and globally. The federal government's ability to issue isolation and quarantine orders in order to prevent the spread of communicable diseases across state lines or international borders, for example, comes from the Commerce Clause. And finally, the federal government has the authority to make all laws that are necessary and proper to ensure implementation of these powers. This authorization is known as the Necessary and Proper Clause, and we'll discuss it further in the next slide. The Supreme Court has broadly interpreted the federal government's enumerated powers and has found many implied powers. Unlike the enumerated powers, implied powers are not expressly listed in the Constitution. Instead, implied powers are the powers that the Supreme Court has interpreted as necessary for carrying out the federal government's enumerated powers. Implied powers are a complicated concept to explain in the abstract. Let's look at Congress's power to spend money for the general welfare, also known as the spending clause, to see how it works in practice. As you might recall from a few slides ago, spending for the general welfare is one of the federal government's enumerated powers. Even though the Constitution doesn't say anything about bribery, the Supreme Court has interpreted the spending clause as allowing Congress to take any reasonable steps necessary to prevent federal funds from being misspent. This includes prohibiting bribes to any federally funded organization, even if there is no proof that the attempted bribe actually affected federal funds. According to the court, requiring proof of a connection between bribes and federal funds would be unreasonable and impractical. Therefore, prohibiting bribery of organizations that distribute federal funds is a constitutional exercise of implied power because it is necessary and proper for the government to exercise its enumerated power granted by the spending clause. The federal government also has a number of concurrent powers that it shares with the states, including the power to collect taxes, build roads, and establish bankruptcy laws. The power to collect taxes is one of the federal government's enumerated powers. Thus, it is a good example of how enumerated powers can also be shared with the states. Under the 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, states retain all of the powers not specifically delegated to the federal government. This broad and undefined authority retained by the states, and by extension local governments, is often referred to as police power. Despite its name, police power encompasses more than just the power held by law enforcement. Rather, it refers to state and local governments' expansive authority to promote the public's health and safety and the general well-being of the community. This means that state and local governments have broad powers to protect the public's health as long as those actions are reasonable and are balanced against the rights of any affected individuals. A good example of police power is state and local governments' authority to prevent the spread of infectious disease, whether through mandatory vaccination laws or isolation or quarantine orders. In addition to police power, states also have the power to regulate their own internal affairs. This power is granted to each state by its state constitution. Although the extent of these powers may vary from state to state, they typically encompass the power to conduct elections, establish local governments, regulate intrastate commerce, business entirely within state boundaries, issue licenses, including for things like the medical profession or assisted living and childcare facilities, and affirm amendments to state constitutions. The structure of local governments also varies a lot between the states. Most states have at least 2 tiers of local government: counties and municipalities. These typically have a governing council made up of local elected officials who govern in conjunction with a mayor or president. Traditional responsibilities vary considerably among counties. However, they often include services related to law enforcement and public safety, transportation and infrastructure, and community health. Within counties are municipalities. Their responsibilities can include police and fire, animal control, parks, public works, and water, to name a few. If you're interested in learning more, we encourage you to check out our free training called Structure of Government, Exploring the Fabric and Framework of Public Health Powers. This training is part of the Public Health Law Academy, which is supported by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. Our free and easy-to-use trainings provide a deeper understanding of the use of law and policy to improve population health outcomes. Developed in cooperation with ChangeLab Solutions, the online trainings offered by the Public Health Law Academy are essential for all public health professionals. To learn more, visit www.publichealthlawacademy.org. The views expressed in this video, including written training materials or publications, do not necessarily reflect the official policies of CDC or the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, nor does the mention of trade names, commercial practices, or organizations imply endorsement by the U.S. government. Like all materials associated with the Public Health Law Academy, this video provides legal information but not legal advice, and no attorney-client relationship is created. Please contact an attorney in your state if you need legal advice. Furthermore, the information provided in this video is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. ChangeLab Solutions does not enter into attorney-client relationships. And while every effort has been made to verify the accuracy of these materials, legal authorities and requirements may vary from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. The contents of this presentation have not been formally disseminated by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and should not be construed to represent any agency determination or policy. Always seek the advice of an attorney or other qualified professional on any questions you may have about a legal matter.